Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this, the latest in the series of webinars by the TUC, West Midlands Combined Authority Skills Partnership. We're going to be talking today about building a mental health network, and if you don't know me already, my name's Matt Pointon, and I'll be hosting. Now, the other gentleman who's on the screen, I'm going to be introducing in a second, but before I do, a little bit of housekeeping. You should be able to see and hear both of us fine. If you can't, that's an IT problem. It might be from your end, but it might be from ours. So if there's a problem, we also have another person here. You can't see him, but he's here. His name's Yusuf. He's our IT guru. And if you're struggling, pop a message in the chat and he can try and sort you out, so long as the problem's, of course, from our end. Talking about the chat, I asked people a while back to introduce themselves, which quite a few people have done. We've got Stan was quick off the blocks from Northants, Unison, Mark from the Scottish Highlands, we get Unison in London, Usdor Lancs, Winston from London, CWU. So we've got nice range of unions there. PCS in Sussex, Unite. What else we got? Unite Newham, more Unison, Prospect in Edinburgh. North Tyneside, Unison, Caroline in Prospect, RCM Wales. So really nice mix of unions today, and I think that shows that what we're going to be talking about today is something that actually goes across the board. I think it's something that actually can interest people from any union anywhere, because mental health affects everybody. While we're talking about the screen that you see, and if you haven't introduced yourself, please do. You'll notice that at the bottom there is a little tab that says Ask a Question. And at the moment there is a 1 there. That's because somebody has already worked it out. They put their question in. But if you've got a question for Jamie, pop it in there. Okay, now the reason is this is not Zoom and it's not Teams, so you can't turn your microphone on and talk to us directly. This platform is called Crowdcast. It's more like a lecture platform. But what you can do is ask your question in the chat, and I think there will be quite a few questions today. There always seems to be when Jamie speaks, because what he talks about is really interesting. Then we can ask them at the end when he's finished his presentation. So if you've got a question, you pop it in now, or if it comes to you whilst Jamie's talking, then off you go. Now, before I let him start, a few announcements, a few bits of housekeeping. We've been doing loads at the TUC, ever since kind of September. I think it's really been busy. People are meeting face to face again. We've got events going on. It's been absolutely brilliant. And we've got more coming up. One of the events we've had recently, we actually did a webinar like this on Crowdcast for the Hong Kongers in Britain, all about getting jobs in the healthcare sector. We had over 100 people signed up. Really successful, in partnership with our friends at the National Careers Service. And the reason I'm saying that is, if you want a webinar doing for your union, maybe there's a particular topic that you're interested in, but you don't have the tech or the program yourself, come and see us. We can support you. If you want to, you're saying like, actually, yeah, something with National Careers Service along like CV writing, because we've got redundancies coming up. Come and see us and we can support. That's what we're there to do. So we did it with our partners in the Hong Kongers in Britain Association, and it was really, really successful. And, what we did is we managed to get translators in and things like that. So we really made it bespoke for them. So that's something you might want to think about. Coming up, so in no particular order, let me have a look. What have we got? On the 7th of November, we have the launch of the North of Tyne. I don't know what it's officially called. It's basically like the skills partnership we've got in the West Midlands, but up in the North of Tyne. So I'll call it the North of Tyne Skills Partnership. And that's an amazing project that's funded by the North of Tyne Combined Authority. And it's all about promoting workplace learning and union learning up there in the Northeast. The launch event looks really good. We've got, I think, the Metro Mayor's going to be there. There's going to be some really great speakers, some really great workshops. I'm going up, and that's at the Mechanics Institute in Newcastle upon Tyne on the 7th of November. So I did see there were some people from up in that part of the world. If you're not signed up, get to it already. It's going to be a really good event. I believe there's a buffet, so what more could you want? So there's that one. Also, let me have a look. What have I got? On the 16th of November, you've got a choice of events. If you're in the West Midlands, you can come to the Moseley Community Hub in Birmingham, where we'll be doing a community learning day in conjunction with Birmingham Adult Education and Community, the trade union. So, come along, support us with that. I can give details to that one if you're interested. But if you're in Yorkshire and Humber, there is the Yorkshire and Humber Region ULR Forum, and that's at Wortley Hall in Sheffield from 10 till 4. Sierra 35 7 Delta Bravo, if you want the postcode. Oh, you just put the link as to how to sign up for that one. I went to the last one. I'm a bit annoyed I can't go to this one because the last one was really good. So, it clashes with my own event, so that's not happening. Another thing that's going to come up is on the 23rd of November, our partners in the WEA, they've set up a digital branch of the WEA for trade unionists. And what they're going to be doing, they had the launch, I think it was last week. Yes, it was last week. They had the launch. Paul Novak spoke, and Simon Parkinson, the General Secretary of the WEA. And it's a learning space for all trade unionists of all stripes, retired, still working. And it's a place where we can come together and do a bit of learning, learn about the past, the present, and the future. Now, I know they're planning to have monthly meetings, and the first one is going to be on the 23rd, 18:30, so it's 6:30 in the evening. And we've got a speaker from RMT, Ivor Riddle. He's going to be there, and he's actually here today. I saw him announce himself. So, nice to digitally see you today, Ivor. But we're gonna hear you speak on the 23rd. So that's all the better. And he's going to be talking about the recent disputes that RMT have been involved with, and some of the kind of media slander campaigns against them, and the importance of those disputes. So if you're interested in what's going on at the moment, come along to that. It's a free event. You don't have to be a member of WEA, although I would recommend you join. It's quite good. Okay, so that's that one. Another thing that's going on at the moment is of course, Black History Month. It is the final day of October today. So it's the final day of Black History Month that's been celebrated all throughout October. And what we've been doing is we've been posting a different blog every week by a Black activist in the movement. And they're on the Union Learn website. The Union Learn website, by the way, has been revamped of late. So it should be a better experience than it's been in the past. Yusuf posted the link, but we've had like Zita Holborn from Artists Union England and PCS, and we've had Diane Abbott Ebank, she's from PCS. There was Quincy, who was up in the Northeast, I forget which union actually, but we've had various different Black activists talking about their experience in the movement. And there's another one from a member of the Musicians Union, Jennifer. She's going to be posted up today. So check that out. The great resource, and it's really inspiring to hear about people's stories. While we're also talking about what the unions can do for you, is quick reads. We have a partnership with the Reading Agency, and if you're in the West Midlands and you're in Nasworth, you'll see me at your regional conference at the weekend. And one of the things they do is give out quick reads. These is a series where famous authors have given up their time for free to write an easy to read book. So it's not a childish book. It's a book aimed for adults, but it's not over-facing if you're perhaps dyslexic, or if you just struggle with your reading a bit, or if English is a second language. Also, I believe very, very effective for people with dementia as well. to try and stimulate the brain cells and keep them active. And we've got lots of these quick reads, and they're a resource for you, the unions, to use. So if you'd like some, give Yusuf, send him an email. He's just popped his email address up there, and he could send out 20, 30, 40, whatever it is you want. Now, Yusuf, by the way, we have Miss has put doesn't know if it's her internet, but she can't hear anything. So I hope it's your internet and not everybody's. Otherwise, you'll have just been watching my mouth move for a long time, not having heard anything. Okay, so that's that one. I'm just trying to think. Yes. Before we go, I believe that Jamie will be using a PowerPoint during this talk. What I can say is that sometimes the writing is rather small, or the images of the speakers at the bottom block off some of the writing. If that's the case, don't worry, because what we'll do is we will send out the PowerPoint to everybody afterwards. And of course, to come onto this, you have to register, so we have your email, so we can send you that PowerPoint out. So don't worry about if you've missed a bit. Don't think you have to screenshot everything. We can send we will send the PowerPoint out afterwards. I think that is all the housekeeping. One more thing. This is part of a series, and the next one we're looking at the first week in December, probably the 6th. So we're not entirely sure. We hope to do one about the cost of living crisis. We're not entirely sure about that one, but we're looking for the next one on the 6th of December, and that will be another webinar like this one. But again, you're here not to listen to me. You're here to listen to Jamie, so I'm going to shut up. And I'm going to introduce Jamie McGovern. I heard him speak at our Midlands Festival of Learning. He was brilliant. Really, really interested the room. So that's why we said, you've spoken to the Midlands, you need to speak nationally, I guess. And Jamie is the area safety rep for the Communication Workers Union, Merseyside and Wirral. He's also a mental health first aid instructor, and he is one of the chairs of the Northwest Mental Health Network. And Jamie is going to talk to us about building a mental health network. And I guess before he does, I have a couple of questions, mate. And my question is, one, what on earth is a mental health network? And, I had a look through some of the stuff before, and it talks about doing stress risk assessments. That sounds complicated. Is it? Over to you.
No, it's not that complicated at all, really, Matt. In terms of what a mental health support network is, basically it's just a group of like-minded individuals who are coming together to support others. Not all of them are mental health first aid trained. Some of them are just mental health ambassadors. Some of them are mental health advocates. Some, of course, are mental health first aid trained. But we believe in supporting numbers. And our network's grown from 11 over to over 100 people now involved in our mental health support network. And as I say, it's just a group of like-minded individuals who come together through a network of organisation to make sure they're available to support other people who may be struggling with mental health issues in work. In terms of stress risk assessments, got to debunk that myth. They're not at all complicated. They're actually one of the easiest risk assessments that anyone can do. And the reason why they're easy is with a stress risk assessment, you will have a person at the other end of the table who is basically telling you the answers. The key skill in stress risk assessments is actually listening to the individual and creating an action plan based on the answers they give you. So what I'll do is I'll probably just look at the PowerPoint now, Matt, Yusuf, and go through the PowerPoint.
By the way, before you do that, Bev has said, I believe you won a TUC award. Is that true?
Yes, I was fortunate enough to win the TUC award, yeah.
Well, congratulations, mate. Congratulations.
Thanks. So yeah, I mean, I know Matt's already mentioned. You mentioned that the writing is a little bit small, but what I'll do is I'll try and talk you through it bit by bit and explain the slides and what they're about. And this is us basically identifying that you can see in the highlighted area there, working in partnership is really effective. We've found that And there's an old saying, safety in numbers, don't go it alone. A thriving mental health network is basically exactly that, a network where there's support for each other, especially people doing guided conversations or conversations in the workplace or supporting with serious issues. And we don't just support individuals who need that help, we support each other as a network as well, because that's really, really important. So as I say, working in partnership is really effective. There's a couple of organisations there on our first slide that we've worked with over recent times. A couple of them you may have heard of, a couple of them you may not have heard of, but our belief is that we open the door to experts. So say, for example, if we're dealing with someone with ADHD or adult ADHD, we'll go to the ADHD Foundation, or another small organisation that we've used in Liverpool, an organisation called Liverpool Ladders of Life, small organisation there, but an expert in that topic matter. Also the likes of NHS, Talk Liverpool, they've been particularly good. They've supported a lot of people in our area through their iCloud and their talk and therapy service. And another organisation we've used is Five-A-Side Chess. And Five-A-Side Chess has been fundamental in helping us build our new stress risk assessment for armed forces veterans and armed forces reservists. Now, Five-A-Side Chess, they're an organisation, basically suicide prevention organisation, and they travel around the country with their suicide awareness bus. They visit workplaces, they visit organisations, they visit community centres, and they talk to people, and they use chess as basically the first tool to saying hello to people. So the chess is secondary. With Five-A-Side Chess, it's all about the conversation. And we have a saying that everything starts with a conversation. Every level of support that you can give someone starts with that initial conversation occurring. So next slide, please, Matt. Next slide, please, Matt or Yusuf.
Are you able to see the next slide? I've changed it to the next one.
Oh, no, not sorry, I can't see it, Yusuf.
One second, I'll just share that
Okay.
again.
Interesting. While that's coming up, Jamie. I mean, so what you seem to be saying is it's about you don't have to be the expert, but it's about knowing where they are and just it's all about the signposting, isn't it?
A lot of the time, yeah. I mean, we're the first listening ear, but obviously in terms of mental health first aid provision, obviously sometimes we have to encourage other help and other more appropriate help. And this is like just an example of our signposting booklet. And there's a number of organisations on there, from addiction right the way through to crisis support, dealing with depression, eating disorders, learning disabilities, mental illness, panic attacks, self-harm. And organisations that have supported any CW member in the Northwest will go onto our booklet. So we don't just cherry pick organisations. What we try and do is we look at the organisations that have offered support to our members and good support, and then we try and champion them. So our signposting booklet is just a booklet of organisations or charities or expert organisations that have supported a member of the CWU, and so therefore we then champion them and we put them onto our signposting booklet. I mean, this is a booklet that we've shared for the last few years, and obviously it keeps growing. It's edited every single year, and we now use it on QR coded posters in workplaces. So you can see there's a little QR code on the bottom, and if anyone's on the screen, if you were to scan that on your phone, you'll see our signposting booklet, which is on a sway document. And as I say, every single organisation on there has supported a member of the CWU. And even the small organisations, who you may have not have heard of, they can offer some fantastic, really bespoke support for individuals. I mentioned the Liverpool Ladders of Life organisation. They offered fantastic support for a colleague who was struggling, and they just came in, suggested with us some reasonable adjustments, and it really worked. So therefore, our key message is, if there's experts out there, our idea is let's use them and let's invite them in to talk to trade unions and support with people's reasonable adjustments. That's another myth that seems to be carded around, that many charities and organisations don't want to work with trade unions. Couldn't be further from the truth. Everyone we've approached has always been very receptive to working with trade unions and working with us in developing innovative ideas in the workplace and how we can support individuals. So that's just an example of our signpost and booklet. And in I think the last count, over 2,500 people have scanned on it, on the QR code in the Northwest, because the beauty about when you set up a SWAY document, you can actually count how many people are looking at it. So the last count, after World Mental Health Day, we looked at how many people have scanned on that document, and over 2,500 of our members have scanned on that document, which shows you that people are interested in organisations out there. So again, next slide, please, Yusuf. The next slide is just an example. Can't see the slide, Yusuf, again, so I'll just talk through it while
you can, Jamie. I don't know about people on the thing. I think it
might be yours, Jamie, because I don't know if it's to do with you on your iPad, but everyone can see the slide.
So is the next slide got the 100 people on?
Yeah,
right side? Yeah. So obviously that's just an example of our network. So we started off in 2017 with a group of 11 people, just trying to get involved in supporting people in the workplace, looking at the HSEs, talking toolkits, how we can undertake guided conversations, how easy they are to do. And basically, it's just grown from 2017. This was in our branch, in the Merseyside Amal Branch, but then I went to our regional officers, Mark Holt, Carl Webb, Emma Garner from the CW, and said, look, can we try and grow it into a regional network? And then it started to really gather pace. And we've now got over 100 people in 3 thriving mental health networks. We ask our people to wear the lanyards and the badges, because obviously the lanyards and the badges are really important to us, because you can see our logo on the screen there, hopefully the Lighthouse logo. That can really connect with people. People can see a badge or see a lanyard and pick up straight away, and they know potentially there's someone with a listening ear available to them. And they may not need that conversation right now, but they'll remember the fact that you've got a lanyard on or you've got a badge and you're approachable. So we ask all our people in our networks to wear those badges and those lanyards when they're in the workplaces, because, again, you never know when anybody needs that conversation. Also, it can happen outside of work as well. We know a couple of people who've used the lanyards when they've been out in delivery, delivering to a customer, and had conversations around their mental health issues just by simply wearing the lanyard or a badge. So a badge can actually be the start of a conversation. So if you can put the next slide up for the audience, please, Yusuf.
Yep, it's up.
Okay, so I think this will be the Tin Man image.
Yep.
This is an example of one of our posters. And on the screen, you should see where it says kindness is contagious. And this is one of our key messages for, I think it was for Time to Talk Day. When you really make an attempt to listen to someone, it's amazing how much information that person is then prepared to tell you about their journey or their mental health journey or their need for support. And what you can see on the screen there is just an image of one of our posters, again, with the QR code on there. It mentions there using QR codes have really been effective for us in terms of connecting with people. That was a poster that's been hit over 1,400 times for Time to Talk Day. And on that poster as well, we also promote the Hub of Hope. The Hub of Hope is obviously promoted by Mental Health First Aid England as well. And wherever you are in the UK, if you click on the Hub of Hope through SatNav location, they can then identify your nearest support based on which postcode you are in the UK. So the Hub of Hope is something that we always try and promote. But that's just an example of a poster that anyone can put in their workplace. A poster with a connective image and a basic QR code, whereby someone can just scan on a QR code straight away and have access to information. So again, that poster, I think it mentions there, hit over 1,400 times. You know, it's a poster that we know has connected with people. It might be the image, it might be the way it's designed, but when you know posters connect with people, you tend to leave those posters running year on year. So that's a poster that we'll continue to use. Again, you can see our little logo on the top there, which is the Lighthouse logo. And basically the Lighthouse logo is for hope, and the hope acronym basically means helping our people excel. So that's our badge and our logo that we use on all our lanyards as well. So next slide then, if you don't mind, Yusuf.
Yep, it's done.
Okay, so hopefully the next slide should be about mental health first aiders. Obviously, I'm a mental health first aid instructor for the CW, and I absolutely believe in the mental health first aid model. I know there's probably a wider societal debate on whether mental health first aid is the answer, but certainly from my perspective, I've seen the value that mental health first aiders bring. I've no doubt, I know a couple of mental health first aiders, I'm sure they've saved some people's lives by their connection. And the reason I know that is people have written to me to tell me the mental health first aiders have brought them so much value. In the last couple of years, it's been difficult going through mental health first aid training. We had to go to online delivery on the mental health first aid training model, but we continued to do it because we knew there was a demand out there, and we knew many people needed mental health support, especially after the pandemic. Anxiety went through the roof, and obviously we're dealing with people now in the aftermath of the pandemic, and long COVID is here, anxiety is still here, we've got the cost of living crisis. So we made sure that during the pandemic we kept our training going, and it was the online delivery model. We're now back in the classroom, and we've now trained over 100 people in the Northwest in just over 2 years. So our numbers are still growing, and we're trying to get a mental health first aider in every single workplace. That's got to be our key ambition. We're around, in my branch, we're around 90% there, but we do need mental health first aiders out there because we see them as important as any rep out there to enable those conversations to happen and enable those documents to be done for individuals. So you can see on the screen there, it talks about ALGE, approaching, listening, giving support and information, encouraging the individual to seek appropriate professional help, and encouraging other supports. And the ALGE model is pretty fundamental to what we do as a network. We make sure that, you know, listening with empathy is one of the key issues. You know, when you make a decision that you want to listen to someone, once that person believes you're ready to listen, it's amazing what they'll tell you. And as I say, these guided conversations, they then lead into other things. So with guided conversations, or stress risk assessments as they're known, they can lead into other protective measures, things like disability risk assessments for mental health disability, and workplace adjustment agreements, or workplace adjustment passports, or disability passports. Depends on which organisation you work in. But basically, your reasonable adjustments should be detailed on one of these things, be it a disability passport or a workplace adjustment agreement. And disability risk assessments for mental health disability are also pretty straightforward. I'll talk about that in a second, how easy they are. You know, what we try and do is debunk the myth again that it's very complicated, and it's not. The guided conversations are easy. HSE's talking toolkit, which is a stress risk assessment, really easy to apply, and disability risk assessments can often come on the back of that. I'll explain a little bit more in a minute of how easy they are, but that slide there on the screen is just about our principles, our underlying principles, that we do use the ALGE approach because we do see it as real value to us. So next slide, please, Yusuf.
Done.
Okay, so that should be the next slide, which is the Talking Toolkit slide. Now, in terms of the Talking Toolkit slide, I mean, this is basically available to anyone who's prepared to download it. And basically, this is a stress risk assessment. You can go on HSE's website, you can download the Talking Toolkit, and basically, you can then have a conversation with someone in the workplace using this toolkit. It's a series of scripted questions, but they all concentrate on the 6 key stresses in work, and they are change, role, demands, support, relationships, and control. They're the main 6 key stresses in terms of the workplace. And what the Talking Toolkit does is it has a series of generic questions, and it gives the opportunity for an individual to talk about how those 6 key stresses are affecting them in work. Now, it may be the fact that an individual only talks about 2 of those 6 key stresses, and that's what we concentrate on. But you're asked all the questions, and some of the questions may not be appropriate. But what you'll do is, by asking these questions, you'll be able to identify quickly what the key issues are. So for one person, it could be the demands of the job. For another person, it could be the change in the role or the change in the way the job is being designed. Another one could be relationships with managers, relationships with work colleagues. But what it does do is it opens that door to the conversation around how we support that individual. Now, what Mental Health First Aid England do is, when you have a conversation, you then design what's called a RAP, a Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And that's what the Talking Toolkit does. It leads you to create an action plan for the individual you're supporting. And it is really, really easy when you listen to an individual, when you concentrate on their key issues, it's then pretty straightforward to set up an action plan, because you're able to identify what the main issues are, what the key stresses are, and then act on those issues. So I think it's very rare that you'll hear a trade union rep eulogising about a kit like this, especially a HSE kit, because, you know, I've had my concerns about the HSE during the pandemic, you know, certainly in my area, but this piece of kit really, really works. It's really effective. Where we represent in Royal Mail and Parcel Force, basically they have something called a guided conversation for stress. And basically all it is, it's the same kit that the HSE Talking Toolkit, it's just rebranded with a different name. So I'd say have a look at it, you know, see if you want to download it and try it on someone, and make it into a formal process. What I will say is we always do informal stress risk assessments in our life, you know, just by going up to someone in your family saying, you know, how are you today? You know, is everything okay? You know, can we talk? You know, that's an informal stress risk assessment that you're carrying out with your family. You know, I do it with me children most days. You know, all we're doing with the Talking Toolkit is making it into a formal process. So in the workplace, again, you're asking those questions, but you start to detail the answers, because again, stress risk assessments are legal documents. They need to be acted on. Stress is covered off under lots of huge amounts of legislation. But in terms of the requirements to risk assess, this ticks a big box, the HSE's Talking Toolkit. You know, keep practicing at it, because the more you do something, the better you become at it. And we've done over 200 now, 200 guided conversations. And as I say, normally they do work. And the reason we know that is because 90% of the people that we've done guided conversations with have been able to stay in work with adjustments. So basically, you use the Talking Toolkit for what it's designed for, present it to the employer, use it as a stress risk assessment, and make sure those adjustments come out on the back of that. So that's a little bit about the Talking Toolkit. Next slide, please, Yusuf.
Already.
Okay, so this is a little bit about our strategy and what we believe is the 6 key universal principles that you've got to adopt as mental health first aiders in our mental health support network. We call it the vision strategy, and obviously vision is an acronym. So the key one, V, value everybody. You know, I remember a guy called Professor Steve Flatt spoke at one of our events, and he turned around and said, no one has a value of 0. Everyone has a starting value of at least 1. And that's one of our key messages. Make sure we value everyone. The I is for information. Try and create a workplace culture where mental health issues are accepted. A notice board, a quiet room. It's amazing how much information you can put onto notice boards. But that information is key, because once you start to provide information on mental health and mental health support, it then becomes more acceptable. Support, again, supporting individuals is key to our message, but also supporting each other in our networks. Because if someone is dealing with a very serious issue, we want to make sure as a network, someone else is linking in with that individual who may be impacted through whatever trauma they're dealing with for an individual. So support is absolutely key for us, right at the heart of our network. Inclusion, again, make sure that the individual that you're supporting has a say in their outcome. You know, don't just speak to them and tell them what they need. Listen to what they need. And then what you do through inclusion, you involve them in creating their action plan. That's the key message. You know, I very often hear people who will tell someone what they need rather than actually listening to someone. When you listen to someone, it's amazing how much information you can harvest just by taking that time to listen. When we teach mental health first aid, we always mention Alan Wicker. And I don't know how many people on this call may remember Alan Wicker. For those who don't, he was an interviewer, I think in the 70s and the 80s. And you reckon he was the greatest active listener, because when people were talking to Alan Wicker, he'd make sure he looked interested in what they had to say. And by him doing that, more people would then talk more to Alan Wicker than you would do to any other interviewers, you know, and we say the same. If someone's really talking to you deeply about what's going on in their life, make sure you take a deep interest in what they're telling you. So that's the best way you can support them. Listen with empathy. There's a massive difference between sympathy and empathy, and we try and tell people to listen with empathy. Again, our open door network is there, always for open door approach. You want to make sure that at any given time there's support available for individuals. And networking, make sure that, you know, in our networks, you know, we make sure we network with each other's and with other trades unions possibly, and with other regions within our own structures as well. Networking is a key issue for us. So that's just a little bit about our strategy and how it's developed. But again, support and inclusion is absolutely key, and it's central to all we do. Next slide, please, Yusuf.
Done.
Okay, so this slide should be the one on risk and sharing good practice. So we have a website as well in terms of our network, which is it's www.unionsafety.eu. And if you go on there and you click on the It's Okay Not to Be Okay logo or the Mental Health First Aid logo, it will take you through to our Mental Health First Aid pages. Now, there's a lot of information on there that's free surely, which we share with everyone. There's another protected area as well. So in our network, people can go in and look at example documents of what we've used, example risk assessments. They're all anonymized, but it's a password area. So say, for example, if someone's dealing with chronic OCD in a workplace and we've got a templated risk assessment on it, that person can then go into our web pages, access and download that risk assessment, and then do similar or use it as a template to start the conversation. So on the web pages, we also put videos on there. We also put details of which awareness days we promote each year. We promote for a year, you know, but as it's mentioned on the slide there, robust risk assessment process is the most important thing we do, because that protective measures document is what gives that individual a great sense of assurance when they leave the room. If they have something in their back pocket that protects them, they feel much safer and much calmer when you leave the room. So guided conversations, talking toolkit, these are all stress risk assessments. Disability risk assessments as well, a really, really key risk assessment to complete. What we find is in workplaces, a lot of people will do physical disability risk assessments routine. You know, they'll do them without any issues. Like, say, for example, someone with an arthritic condition or someone who may be dealing with a lower back issue. Disability risk assessment for physical disability is pretty straightforward. But we find that most people won't attempt a mental health disability risk assessment because they assume it's complicated. And actually what we're saying is it's not that complicated. Most adjustments for mental health disability we've found are cost-free. Very often it's just some people may need regular, robust routine. You know, some people may just need support in terms of, you know, the change in the way they work rather than changing the individual. So these risk assessments we found are really, really vital. And when someone, as I say, leaves that room with a document in the back pocket that protects them, i.e. a protective measures document, people feel so much better and then less stressed because they realise they've got something that is there to support them. It's their action plan tailored to them as individuals. So next slide, please, Yusuf. We're nearly there through the slides, I think.
Done.
Yeah, so for those who are safety minded, this is just the hierarchy of controls. And I'm just going to look at this from a mental health perspective. So in terms of mental health, you know, in terms of the hierarchy of controls, we can't eliminate it or substitute. When it comes to mental health, we can't eliminate mental health. Everyone exists on something called the mental health continuum. We all exist on this continuum. So we can't actually eliminate the risk of mental health. We can't substitute it either. So we can't substitute or eliminate the risk. But what we can do is we can put in control measures. And our control measures are the likes of our network, our mental health first aiders and ambassadors, our reps, our health and safety reps as well. They'll be involved in risk assessments. And normally, when we do put in the control measures, we will see a very good response from the individual we're supporting. And some of these risk assessments are really, really straightforward. I always mention one example, and this is because it sounds complicated, but it's not at all complicated. And I always share this information because the individual likes me to share his story. But this was a guy, and apologies to anyone who's heard this before because I do repeat this story. This is a guy who had complex OCD, and he worked as a postie. And basically, his complex OCD was he was obsessed with anti-clockwise theory, and anti-clockwise theory has been around for a long time, certainly since at least Victorian times. Anti-clockwise theory is to do with how the heart pumps blood around the body, and it's why merry-go-rounds go around the way they do, because Victorians found when they sent them around in a clockwise direction, people were fainting and falling off the merry-go-round. Anti-clockwise theory is why athletes run around the track anti-clockwise. It's why cyclists go around the velodrome anti-clockwise. It's actually also why greyhounds go around their track anti-clockwise. It's all to do with anti-clockwise theory and how the heart pumps blood around the body. So you can see how easy it is for someone to become obsessed with anti-clockwise theory. And this guy, again, became quite obsessed. He wanted to work in an anti-clockwise direction when he was delivering mail. And when we approached his manager, he said, no, he needs to work like everybody else. So we said, no, he doesn't, because it's a reasonable adjustment. OCD, covered under the Equality Act, it's a reasonable adjustment. Change the way, the work is presented rather than trying to change the individual. And under protest, the work was changed, and this guy just works in anti-clockwise delivery loops now when he's out on delivery. And the real benefit has been basically for not just the individual, but for the business as well, because he's had a long time now without any absence, because we've made that change to allow him to work with his condition rather than try and change the individual. And that's just an example of a guided conversation we did that's led into a disability risk assessment, that's led into a cost-free, reasonable adjustment. And as I say, anti-clockwise theory, OCD. There's a lot of OCD out there, certainly in the organisations and the industries where we represent. And we found OCD to be quite common and quite complex at times. But again, that example just shows how easy it is to make a cost-free adjustment that benefits both the individual and the employer. So again, that's just in terms of the hierarchy controls. As mentioned, you can't eliminate, that issue because everyone has the mental health. You can't substitute it, but you can put in those control measures to allow that support for that individual. And again, if anyone's interested in anti-clockwise theory, I've become interested in it now because I found this guy to be fascinating. He educated me on anti-clockwise theory, and now when I take the dog for a walk, I now start going in anti-clockwise direction because I know it's apparently better for me. So I've learned a lot from that particular guy. So next slide, please, Yusuf. I think we're nearly there on the slides. Yep. I think this might be the last one. I think. Yeah, these are just examples of what we try and do in our network. And our people in our network, they share things through our network that may be useful. Like this morning, for example, one of our colleagues has shared an example of PTSD around bonfire night. It can be really concerning for ex-armed forces people or armed forces reservists. So let's not forget about them at this time of year. And we've shared that on our wider networks again this morning. That's just the mental health first aider who shared something this morning, which we put out to our network. It's coming up to bonfire night. Let's think about, our ex-armed forces colleagues who may need some additional time off from work. But this last slide, again, it talks about the difference between empathy and sympathy. There's a really good video by Brenny Brown online, about the difference between empathy and sympathy. And empathy fuels connection, sympathy drives disconnection. And we've seen that. We've seen our people with, the empathic listening ear, people support an individual. When you've got empathy, it's amazing how much people will tell you. But there are 4 awareness events on the slide there that we try and promote every single year. And there's so many good awareness dates and awareness events each year. We actually have an awareness calendar from January through to December. But the likes of the 4 ones we try and concentrate on are the ones that people may sort of, remember from year on year. So Time to Talk Day, which comes around every February. Mental Health Awareness Week, we always try to do some of the stuff for Mental Health Awareness Week, making sure we're out there promoting those messages. Again, try and set ourselves a goal for how many guided conversations or stress risk assessment we can do in that week. World Suicide Prevention Day in September and World Mental Health Day in October. And that's what we do as a network. And as I mentioned on slide 1, it is absolutely a team game. You know, we'd be nothing without our network. You know, I mentioned the likes of Mark Holt, Carl Webb, Emma Garner, Steve Jones, people like that. They were basically pivotal in setting up the wider Northwest Mental Health Network, because we've grown from a branch network into a wider Northwest Mental Health Network. So we've now gone from 11 people to I think it's 118 as we currently stand in our network. And they're out there, they're having conversations in the workplace and they're making a difference to people's lives. So it's not that difficult. If you can get a group together of like-minded individuals, you can then start to set up your own mental health support network. And you know what? It's so valuable, because we know the difference that some of our mental health first aiders in our network have made to individuals. Again, that listening there, it's vital. It's absolutely important. It's crucial we have those in the workplaces. And we can't get everywhere as individuals. That's why we need it as a team. And that's a little bit about our network. Have a little look at our website. And if anybody wants to look at some of our documents, our templated documents, drop Matt or Yusuf an email. Listen, I'll have a chat with you and I'll try and give you the password if you want to have a little look at some of our example risk assessments. Say, if you wanted to look at a risk assessment we've done for OCD, for example, send us an email. I'll show you what it looks like. You can have a little look on the website. Obviously, it's completely anonymized. There's no names on there. These are just examples of how we've made a difference to people's lives just by listening to them and putting in an adjustment. So I think that pretty much covers it, really, Matt. I think that's it in terms of the slides.
Well, interesting. You mentioned Mark Holt. He's on the call and he's been putting loads of stuff in the chat, and also Hilda and Chris. So, half your network seems to be here today as well, which is great. I thought there'd be quite a few questions today, and we've got 10 already. So I'm going to go straight into the questions. I think some will be easier to answer than others. First one's from Maurice. Do they now class mental health and depression as a disability? And if so, how does this impact on a person's employment? Can you help us with that one?
Yeah, so it's classed as a disability if it's likely to last 12 months or it has lasted 12 months. So obviously disability can be foreseeable at times. So what we do is, if we identify someone who's dealing with long-term depression or long-term anxiety, we can actually write to the employer and say, we believe this person's covered under the Equality Act. Do you agree or disagree? And we then want to reserve their employment rights. So yeah, if it's likely to last 12 months or it has lasted 12 months and it's impacting on the way they work, then yeah, we would classify it as a disability. And that's the definition as per the Equality Act as well, Matt.
Okay. Next question is from Ross Kelly. Does the network include non-stewards / activists?
Our network is basically CW members only, but it's not exclusive to CW members. If we wanted to bring someone into our network who wasn't a CW member, but potentially another member from the union and they offer benefit, then we bring them in. It's just the way ours has been built. It's been built up through trade union education and through our connections in the trade union. So it's not that we're excluding anyone. It's just that our network is just CW at the moment. Okay,
brilliant. Quick one. What does it say on your badges and lanyards? That's from Alex Burton Keeble.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see that. There's our badges. So our badges are the Lighthouse logo, and it says CW Northwest Mental Health Network, and then there's a Hope logo, and basically the Hope logo is helping our people excel. It's also on our board behind us there, so you can see our logo. I don't know if people can see that. That's our logo. It was just designed for us. It's the Lighthouse badge, and basically on the bottom is the details of where people write to in terms of our web pages and how they can get in touch with us. But as I say, if you look on our CW Mental Health Network pages on Union Safety, all that information's there as well.
Right. Okay. Also from Alex, who provides the mental health first aid training?
So yes, so we provide the training. Obviously, there was 12 CW instructors. I think we're down to about 9 now. But we provide that training to individuals, basically just for cost of the books. There's no other cost implication. The cost of materials is paid for either by their branch or their region, CW headquarters. Us as instructors, we go in, deliver it for free. So the last 100 people in the last 2 years, they've had absolutely nothing to pay. Been delivered completely free by the CWU. And I think other trade unions are doing it as well. The same model as well. I spoke to Jennifer from the UCU last week on Wednesday, and she said, they're very much doing the same, getting as many people trained up as they can. But
I mean,
we deliver for free.
Well, first aid, it can be expensive if you're getting it off the shelf. But I mean, we at the TUC, we've used Speak Up Mental Health, which is Jane Warwick and Ian Borkett.
Yeah, very good.
They do deals for trade unions. So I guess it depends, Alex, which union you're in. And if there isn't anything going on in your union, maybe come and see us and we'll help source something for you. And you've got Yusuf's email or my email, so we can do that. You just put the Speak Up Mental Health link in. Okay. What impact has working from home had on mental health? How do we reach these members? And actually, that was something I wanted to ask you about. You've talked about building a mental health network in workplaces where you physically meet each other. But, a lot of our unions, it's far more, how can I say, dispersed. So say, for example, a banking union, you might only have 1-2 people in each branch, and so it's harder to coordinate. Any advice there?
Well, then if there's a potential for a smaller network, could they join up with another trade unions network and come under the umbrella of another trade union? I think last Wednesday we sort of mentioned at the Northwest TUC event that we're even thinking potentially about a motion to the Northwest TUC to create a TUC mental health network, rather than just have one union running it or 2 small unions, maybe come under the banner of the TUC. So there's an opportunity to grow it, but if it's a small trade union and there's a small membership, then maybe they could look to link in with other unions or even, link in with us. If people want to link in with us, then we'll have those conversations and we'll try and bring people into our network if need be.
Brilliant. Okay. Now, this one, it is a bit of a question, but it's more of a statement as well. And I think it's worth talking about. I have been involved in supporting members through the impact of harmful gambling and explaining why it is a trade union and workplace issue. Would really like to discuss with Jamie and others the work we have done and the direct links with mental health. Within Learn with Unite, we have seen this as an extension of health and wellbeing offer. I mean, I've taught, this is Keith, and Unite have developed this course about harmful gambling that I think is really good. And so that might be something you want to link up about. And of course, not just yourself, but other people on the call.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of our organisations we signpost to is the Beacon and Merseyside as well. And I think I might have been at the meeting with Keith, possibly in Preston, when the gambling charter was being discussed and trade unions signing up to it. So that's something that we're keen on. And as I say, an organisation that we've used in Merseyside called the Beacon, they've been brilliant, absolutely brilliant in supporting a couple of members in terms of addiction to gambling. So yeah, key issue. And obviously, when there's a cost of living crisis, very often people think they can gamble the way out of it because they've got nowhere else to go, they've got no money in their pocket, so they'll try and gamble the way out of it. So it'll probably be more prevalent now than ever before. So yeah, that's a great shout. Brilliant.
I am going to rush through stuff, but there's loads of links going up in the chat. So do have a link in the chat about free mental health workshop courses, all that kind of stuff. Have a look in there. Next question from Deborah. How do you make sure an individual has support throughout the network when initial conversations are supposedly confidential?
Yes, so every conversation, so most risk assessments will come with a privacy and confidentiality agreement anyway. But obviously, we identify who the interested parties are. So the interested parties will be a small, exclusive group supporting that individual. That may be a supportive manager. It may be a mental health first aid in the workplace. It may be a mental health first aider outside of that workplace. But we make sure that it's only interested parties who have sight of that risk assessment. People who have a right to see it will see it. People who don't will have no involvement in it at all. So privacy and confidentiality is absolutely key. Even reasonable adjustments, when people get a reasonable adjustment on a need-to-know basis, it's only really the manager and the rep or mental health first aider who needs to understand what the reasonable adjustments are. Other people in the unit may not need to know because it won't affect them.
Okay. Next question. Who appoints mental health first aiders within a company? At what level should the mental health first aider be? If all at management level workers on shop floor might not feel comfortable talking to them? That's from Nick Major.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, actually. I mean, we try and make sure it's available to as many people who want to do it. We don't actually assign it. People come to us and approach us, and there's a big list of people who want to become mental health first aiders, and we just assign it on a list of people who just want to do it one by one, and we try and get through that list in any given year. A key point on that is most policies on stress in employers will also have a flow chart about identifying if your manager is a cause for stress, then that duty of care responsibility passes to another manager. So just because a manager is a mental health first aider doesn't mean that centrally it has to go through that individual. If the duty of care responsibility needs to shift to another manager, that should be done. And that's something that we try and make sure we emphasize. If there's potential for conflict or there's an issue, why would you go to a person who's potentially causing a stress and have a conversation with them about stress? You'd rather go to another individual, wouldn't you?
Yeah. All right. Quick one. Can we see a copy of the Awareness Week date calendar? One thing I will say about that, and I'll leave Jamie to answer it, but we've been talking about for Mental Health Awareness Week, which is 9th of May next year. TUC is thinking of doing an event. So do watch the space. We haven't organised anything concrete yet, but we are thinking of having a big mental health event if that's something that interests you. Jamie, you got anything to add on that one?
Well, no, I'll share the mental health awareness calendar, and it covers off basically awareness for each particular month. For example, in February, it's self-injury awareness month in February. That's something that people may not be aware of. Self-harm, there's a big risk with self-harm and suicide, so we try and promote that day in February. But it's a day that many people haven't even heard of, and it's an awareness calendar month that many people may not even be knowing that it exists out there. So I'll share our monthly awareness calendar with you, Matt, and then feel free to share away. It's not just cherry picking. These are just ones that we've used that we found useful.
Okay. Question from Sean. How do you deal with situations where there are mental health first aiders in a workplace, but they don't belong to a union? Or are they all via the union?
No. Obviously, we have mental health first aiders as well, because Mental Health First Aid England, they're the training body. So basically, the qualification, we tutor the 2-day course, which has just recently changed. There's new modules now being delivered from the 28th of September. So the actual delivery modules have changed now. We prefer the 2-day course. We don't prefer the light course or the champions course. We prefer the 2-day mental health first aid course, which gives the individual then a mental health first aid qualification. But no, they don't have to be all members of the union. Any mental health first aider who's had that qualification can offer value. They can bring in something different, and they can have a conversation with anyone. So it doesn't have to be, a trade union member, but the qualification is given out by Mental Health First Aid England. It's just so happens that we do teach a lot of trade union members in the CWU.
Brilliant. Okay, quickly, we probably can fit these in. Are you aware of any good training packs around reasonable adjustment, mental health, and other for both managers and reps? Thanks. That's from Claire Wormold.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the first one to do potentially would be psychological first aid. It's free on I forget which website it's on. It might be on. It's on one of the learning platforms, but that talks about reasonable adjustments for COVID and COVID-related anxiety, and that's a good one to upskill yourself on, and it's free. It also gives you the qualification as a psychological first aider. It's about 5 or 6 hours, but that does talk example reasonable adjustments, and that's primarily around COVID and COVID-related anxiety, but definitely worth doing. Psychological first aid. I think the certificate is issued by Public Health England. Well worth doing if anyone's interested.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Final question, which we've kind of answered anyway, was brilliant presentation. Thanks. Do you provide mental health first aid training online? That's Leanne Ling.
Yes, we do the online version as well. Yeah, we've now, obviously, we're trying to get back into the classroom as much as we can now, because Many of our CW members prefer the in-class training, but we've taken over, over 50, 60 people through the online training as well. There's a different environment, a different learning opportunity, but we do still do the online training, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So questions are now closed. Somebody has asked if the recording of this is going to be put up. Yes, it will be put up on the Union Learn YouTube channel. All of our webinars are put up on the Union Learn YouTube channel. The only thing I would say is it takes a while for Crowdcast to download the program. So don't expect it up tomorrow. It might be like next week or something, but it will come up. Loads of positive feedback. I wish we had longer, but time is up. Thank you so much for talking to us, Jamie. As always, we've run out of time with you. Like, everybody's got so many questions. But, if you do have a specific question for Jamie that we haven't answered, email myself or Yusuf and we'll get that up there. Quick reminders, if you are in Yorkshire on the 16th of November, there is the ULR Forum. Get yourself down there. If you are in the Northeast, on the 7th of November, we've got the launch of the North Tyne Combined Authority Skills Partnership with the TUC. It's going to be a great event. Get yourself up there. We've got the WEA's Trade Union Digital Branch at 6:30 on the 23rd November. The links will be going up through our webinar, our website and all that. So watch this space. Oh, in fact, the link is up there now. Anyway, brilliant. And we are hoping to have our next webinar on the 6th of December, all things well. Thank you for attending. Thanks again to Jamie. It's been brilliant having you. All the best. Goodbye.